April 18th, 1917, Volume 12, Pouring oneself into the divine will and fusing oneself in Jesus form beneficial dew over all creatures. I was fusing myself in my sweet Jesus in order to diffuse myself in all creatures and fuse them all in Jesus. So I kept flinging myself between the creatures and Jesus to prevent my beloved Jesus from being offended and to prevent creatures from offending him. Now, as I was doing this, he told me, "My daughter, as you pour yourself into my will and fuse yourself in me, a sun is formed in you. As you keep thinking, loving, repairing, and so forth, the rays are formed, and my will, as background, becomes the crown of these rays. So the sun is formed, which, rising up in the air, melts into beneficial dew upon all creatures. Therefore, the more you fuse yourself in me, the more suns you keep forming. Oh, how beautiful it is to see these suns, which, rising and rising, remain circumfused within my own sun, and pour beneficial dew upon all. How many graces do creatures not receive? I am so taken by this, that as they fuse themselves, I pour abundant dew of all kinds of graces upon them, so that they may form greater suns, and may be able to pour the beneficial dew more abundantly over all." And as I was fusing myself, I could feel light, love, graces being poured upon my head. April 18th, 1926, Volume 19, The Divine Will, symbolized by the wind. The divine will is the depository of the divine works, and it must also be the depository of the works of creatures. I felt all shrunken within myself, and I tried to fuse myself in the holy divine will, to run along with it, so as to keep it company in its works, and to requite it at least with my little I love you. Now, while I was doing this, my sweet Jesus, coming out from within my interior, told me, "My daughter, courage! Do not pay attention to your littleness. What you must care about is to keep your littleness in my will, because by being in it, you will be dissolved in it, and my will, like wind, will bring the freshness it possesses into your act as refreshment for all creatures. It will bring a warm wind to inflame them with my love. It will bring a cold wind to extinguish the fire of their passions. And finally, it will bring a humid wind to produce the vegetation of the seed of my will." Have you ever experienced the effects of the wind? How it can turn the air almost instantly from warm into cold, from humid into a most fresh and refrigerating air? My will is more than wind, and your acts in it, by agitating it, move the winds it contains and produce admirable effects. Then all these winds, united together, invest the divine throne and bring to their Creator the glory of his will operating in the creature. Oh, if everyone knew what it means to operate in the supreme Fiat and the prodigies it contains, they would all compete to operate in it. See, our will is so great that we ourselves make it the depository of our works. In our will, we deposited the creation, that it might remain ever beautiful, fresh, whole, new, just as we issued it from our creative hands. In our will we deposited the redemption, that it might be always in the act of redeeming, and my birth, my life, my passion and death might be always in the act of being born, of living, of suffering and of dying for the creature. In fact, our will alone has the virtue and the power to maintain the work done always in act, and to reproduce that good as many times as one wants. Our works would not be safe if they were not deposited in our will. If it is so with our works, much more so should it be with the works of the creatures. To how many dangers are they not subject when they are not deposited in our will? How many changes do they not undergo? Therefore, all our contentment is when we see that the creature makes the deposit of her acts in the supreme volition. These acts, though small, and also the trifles of the creature, compete with our acts, and we delight in seeing her industriousness, that in order to place her trifles in safety, she deposits them in our will. Now, if our will was the depository of creation and of redemption, it must also keep the deposit of the fiat on earth as it is in heaven. Here is the reason for my pushing, so that you may do nothing without depositing it in it. If you do not form this deposit of all of yourself, of your little acts, and even of your trifles, not having its full triumph over you, my fiat will not be able to carry out its fiat on earth as it is in heaven. April 18th, 1927, Volume 21. The resurrection of our Lord gave to creatures the right to rise again. Difference that exists between one who operates in the divine will and one who operates outside of it. I was following the holy divine volition in the act in which he rose again from the sepulchre, glorious and triumphant, and my lovable Jesus, coming out from within my interior, told me, "My daughter, by rising again, my humanity gave to all creatures the right to rise again, not only with their souls, to glory and to eternal beatitude, but also with their bodies. Sin had taken away from creatures these rights to rise again. My humanity, by rising again, gave them back to them. It enclosed the seed of the resurrection of all, and by virtue of this seed that was enclosed within me, everyone received the good of being able to rise again from death. One who does the first act must have such virtue as to enclose within himself all the other acts that the other creatures must do, in such a way that, by virtue of the first act, others may imitate him and do the same act. How much good did the resurrection of my humanity not bring, giving to all the right to rise again? Because man had withdrawn from my will, glory, happiness, honors, everything had failed for him. He had broken the link of connection that, connecting him with God, gave him the rights to all the goods of his Creator. And my humanity, by rising again, connected this link of union, returning to him the rights he had lost, and giving him the virtue of rising again. All the glory, all the honor, is of my humanity. Had I not risen again, no one could rise. From the first act come the successions of acts similar to the first. See what the power of a first act is. My queen mamma did the first act of conceiving me. In order to be able to conceive me, eternal Word, she enclosed within herself all the acts of creatures, in order to repay her Creator, so as to be able to say to him, "I am the one who loves you, adores you, satisfies you for all." So finding everyone in my mamma, even though my conception was one, I was able to give myself to all, as life of each creature. The same for you, my daughter. As you do your first acts in my will, the other creatures receive the right to enter into it and to repeat your acts, in order to receive the same effects. How necessary it is that even just one alone do the first act. In fact, it serves to open the door, to prepare the raw materials, to form the model in order to give life to that act. Once the first is done, it is easier for others to imitate it. This happens also in the low world. One who is the first to form an object must work more, sacrifice himself more. He must prepare all the materials that are needed. He must make many trials. And once the first is done, not only do others acquire the right to do it, but it is easier for them to repeat it. However, all the glory is of the one who did it first, because if the first had not been done, the other acts, similar to it, could never have existence. Therefore be attentive in forming your first acts, if you want the kingdom of the divine Fiat to come to reign upon earth. After this I was fusing myself in the holy divine volition, calling all the acts of creatures, so that all might rise again in it. And my sweet Jesus told me, "My daughter, what great difference passes between one act done in my will and one act, even good, done outside of it. Within the first one flows a divine life, and this life fills heaven and earth, and the act receives the value of a divine life. Within the second flows an act of human life that is limited, restricted, and many times its value ends with the end of the act. And if there is any value in it, it is human value that is subject to perishing." April 18th, 1930, Volume 28, How All the First Acts Were Done by God in Adam. Jealousy of the divine love. Guarantee and safety of the divine fiat for the creature. How, in the creation of man, all of us were present and in act. Vivifying and nourishing virtue of the divine will. My poor mind feels the irresistible need to cross the endless sea of the supreme fiat. More than by a powerful magnet, I feel drawn to make my sweet dwelling in my dear inheritance given to me by my dear Jesus. That is his adorable will. It seems to me that Jesus awaits me now in one act done by his divine fiat, now in another, to give me his admirable lessons. So my mind was wandering and going around within its innumerable acts, and as I arrived at dear Eden, where everything was in feast, my dear Jesus, making me pause, told me, "My daughter, if you knew with how much love the creation of man was formed, had merely remembering it, our love swells and forms new inundations, taking the attitude of feast in remembering our work, beautiful, perfect, has it placed in it such mastery of art that no one else can form one similar to it. And it was so beautiful as to reach the point of arousing in our love the jealousy that it be all for us. After all, man had been made for us. He was our own. To be jealous of him was a right of our love. And this is so true that our love reached such extent that all the first acts done in Adam were done by his Creator. So the first act of love was created and done by us in Adam. The first heartbeat, the first thought, the first word. In sum, for everything that he might do afterwards, there were our first acts done in him, and upon our first acts followed the acts of Adam. Therefore, if he loved, his love would spring from within our first act of love. If he thought, his thought would spring from within our thought, and so with all the rest. Had we not done the first acts in him, he would not have been able to either do anything or to know how to do anything. But by the Supreme Being's doing the first acts, we placed in Adam as many little fountains for as many first acts as we did in him, in such a way that every time he wanted to repeat our first acts, he would have these little fountains at his disposal, like as many different springs of love, of thoughts, of words, of works, and of steps. So everything was ours, inside and outside of man. Therefore our jealousy was not only a right, but also justice, that everything was to be for us and completely our own. More so, since we were giving him our divine will, that it might preserve him beautiful, fresh, and would make him grow for us of a divine beauty. Our love was not content or satisfied with so much it had given him. It wanted to continue to give always. It did not want to say enough. It wanted to continue its work of love. And in order to have him with itself, to have the way of interacting with man, it gave him our very will, that it might render him capable of being able to always receive and keep him always with us, with one single will. With it, everything was guaranteed and safe for him and for us. So he was to be our amusement, our joy and happiness, the object of our conversation. Therefore, at the memory of the creation of man, our love takes the attitude of feast. But in seeing him without the guarantee of our fiat, without safety and therefore vacillating, disfigured, and as though far away from us, it takes the attitude of sorrow and feels all the weight of our infinite love as though closed within itself, because it cannot give itself to him, for it does not find him in our divine will. But all this is not all. It was not only for Adam that our love so poured itself, but it reached the point of doing all the first acts from which all the human acts were to have life, and each creature that was to come to daylight was present in that act of the creation of man. And our fiat, united to our love, ran, and embracing all and loving all with one single love, it placed the primacy of our acts in each creature that would come to existence, because for us there is no past and no future, but everything is present and in act. If it were not so, our fiat would find itself constrained and hampered, nor could it expand its flames so much as to enclose all within its light, in such a way as to do in all what it does in one creature alone. Therefore Adam was not the only fortunate one of creation, but all other creatures were enriched with all goods, and in him were the possessors of his same goods. More so, since in everything that God does in one single creature, all other creatures acquire the right of our acts, except for those who do not want to make use of them. Did the same not happen in the very redemption? As the sovereign of heaven had the good of conceiving me and of giving birth to me, all other creatures acquired the right of the goods of redemption. Not only this, but the right of being able to receive me, each of them, in their hearts, and only one who, ungrateful, does not want me, remains without me. Now, my daughter, Adam, by disobeying our wishes, lost our kingdom, and all the goods of our fiat remained for him without the nourishing and vivifying life of our divine will. It can be said that he was like the destroyer of the goods of the kingdom of my divine will in his soul, because in all goods, if the vivifying virtue and the continuous nourishment are missing, of their own, little by little, they lose life. Now you must know that in order to call back to life again these goods in the creature, one who would call back my fiat again into her soul was needed, and who would deny nothing to it, letting it dominate freely, so that it might administer to her again its vivifying and nourishing virtue, to call back to life the destroyed goods. And this is why my divine will, by subduing you, and by your letting yourself be subdued, has resumed its vivifying virtue in your soul, and calling you into its dwelling, it nourishes you, in order to call back in you all of its goods. And all your acts that you do in it, your rounds upon rounds within its acts, your asking continuously for its kingdom upon earth, are nothing other than nourishments that it gives you, and it constitutes the right for other creatures to be able to receive again the kingdom of my divine will with the life of all its goods. When I want to do a good to all creatures, I place the springing font of it in one creature. From this font, I open many channels, and I give to everyone the right to take the goods that the font possesses. Therefore be attentive, and let your flight in my divine will be continuous. April 18th, 1937, Volume 34, Continuous Encounters between the Divine Volition and the Creature. How one who lives in it has formed the little tiny sea of the Fiat. How it always runs in everything in order to give new graces and new love. My flight in the Fiat continues. Rather, I feel that it comes to meet me in every instant, in everything that I touch, that I do, in the sufferings and in the joys, in each created thing, that it places them around me in order to let me use them. It seems to me that it is as spying in order to make itself known so as to tell me, I am here, tell me what you want. You will make me happier if you place me in the condition of being able to abound even more to you, so that felicitating you, I feel myself happier because of the happiness of my daughter. Now, while my mind was drowned in its divine sea, my beloved Jesus, surprising me with his brief little visit, with a love that he could not contain, told me, my blessed daughter, the excessive love of the divine will gives of the incredible. When the creature lives in it, has formed her little sea of the Fiat in her soul, such that drawn by its same power it always wants to increase more this little sea of its in the circle of the soul. Listen to what it does. Taken with this irresistible love, it runs. It always runs in every act that she does. If it sees that she must make use of the word, it runs. It goes to meet her. It invests the word with its fiat and increases its divine power in the word of the creature. If it sees that she must operate, it runs. It takes her hands. It clasps them to itself. It invests them with its fiat, and it augments its divine power in her works. If it sees that she is about to take a step, it runs. It invests it, and gives them such power as to always run toward the one who always runs toward her. If she loves, it runs in order to give her new love. If it sees that she desires, that she wants to be always more good, it runs and augments her goodness. There is no thought, heartbeat, or breath that it does not invest with its fiat in order to make its wisdom, its beauty, the heartbeat of its eternal love grow. But this is not yet everything. Do you believe that my volition can make stops in always running toward the one who possesses its volition? Indeed, in order to run, it makes use of everything. If the sun invests her, it runs in order to give her more light. And since the creature is more than the sun, it gives her the properties that the light contains. Rather, it augments them. It gives her its divine sweetness, its fecundity, the variety of its celestial fragrances, the tastes of its divine flavors, its supreme qualities as the most beautiful varieties of colors. And it does it in a way with the power of its fiat that nothing else remains for its beloved creature more than sun, except light and heat, in order to invest her and let itself be invested. If the wind blows on her, it runs, it invests her, and with its fiat it augments the power of its ruling love, its divine moans, in order to make her moan with its own moans and sighs, that its kingdom come on earth. It kisses her, it caresses her, it clasps her strongly to itself in order to make her feel how much it loves her and how it wants to be loved in return. If she drinks water, it runs in order to invest her with its freshness and celestial refreshments. If she takes food, it runs in order to nourish her with the food of its will, so that the divine life grows in the creature. It strengthens and greatly confirms itself in her. In sum, there is nothing in which my volition does not run. And oh, the feast that it makes when it sees that she receives this sweet encounter and receives the good that without ever ceasing it wants to give her. And if the creature also runs in everything toward the one who runs toward her, oh, then my fiat is taken by so much love that its interminable sea swells. It forms its highest waves and discharges them in the little tiny sea, enlarging in a marvelous and prodigious way the capacity and abundance of it in the little sea of the soul. My daughter, these are our divine ways: to always love without ever ceasing, to always give without ever finishing to give. If this were not so, we would place a limit to our power and enough to our love. But not even we are able to do that, because our being infinite, by itself, it, the divine being, runs in search of the one who loves and who wants to be loved in return. Therefore the limits have no value, and the enough does not exist for us. At the most, some ungrateful one does not want to recognize us. And not recognizing us, it happens as to the blind, that even though the sun does not deny him its light, rather it invests him like everyone else. He does not see or know it, but he cannot deny that he feels its heat. But this cannot happen for one who lives in our volition. Already it itself keeps watch over her in the act of continuous expectation of receiving our encounters in order to encounter each other, our courses in order to run together. And if our love, in order to make her run even more, hides our courses, while we run the same, oh, how the poor daughter writhes! So much so that we are constrained to immediately break the veil of concealment and tell her, "We are here. Calm yourself. Do not fear that we will ever leave our daughter, the daughter of our volition." And in order to calm her, we let her feel our love more vividly, and we abound with greater graces. End of April 18th. Fiat.